Tēnā koutou katoa, ko Gill Jolly toku ingoa. Welcome to this, the latest in a series of MB Science Innovation and Technology Reforms webinars. My name is Gill Jolly. I'm the MB Chief Science Advisor and I'm your host for this hui. I'll open up with the MB karakia. Tawhia tō mana, kia mau kia maia, ka huri taku aru ki te pai kahurangi. Kei reira te orangamoku ma mahi tahi ka ora ka puawai, a mātou mahi katoa, ka pono, ka tika, tihei Māori ora. So, as in previous webinars, we'll have initial presentations and then open up for a question and answer session. Our two presenters today are Danette Olsen and Emma Blott. Danette is the General Manager for Science System Investment and Performance here at MB. And since January, she has also taken the reins as the Programme Director of the Science System Reforms. Danette has a background in marine science and over 30 years' experience that spans roles at Cawthron, CRI's, Victoria University and MB. After Danette, Dr Emma Blott, the Chair of the Research Funding New Zealand, or RFNZ, will share some initial thoughts about the establishment and purpose of RFNZ. Emma has a background in clinical biochemistry before she moved into the commercial sector. She's an experienced executive and governance leader in life sciences R&D. But first, some housekeeping. We're recording this hui and we'll make it available online in the next week or so. For the Q&A, please use the Q&A function in Teams at the top of your screen rather than the chat function. We'll try to get through as many questions as possible, and for those that we don't get to, we'll answer them in future newsletters. Right, let's crack into it. Our first presenter is Danette. Over to you.
Thank you, Jill. Kia ora koutou, and thank you everyone for joining us here today. Today, the session is going to look at how the Science, Innovation and Technology System reforms are progressing, what's changing, and what it means in practice for researchers, research organisations and sector partners. There's been a lot of excitement across the sector around the changes, but we also recognise that change can be challenging. That's why we want to keep you informed and talk through what these changes mean. I'm going to start with an update on the wider reforms, including how we are moving from design to implementation, and how the different parts of the system fit together. The establishment of Research Funding New Zealand, or RFNZ, is a key part of that shift. And that's why we've invited Emma Blott, Chair of RFNZ, to join us today to provide an update on behalf of this new independent funding decision maker, noting, of course, that the board is in its early stages of formation. As many of you will know, the current reforms to New Zealand's Science and Innovation and Technology System are the most significant in more than 30 years. Over the past year, the focus has been on designing a simpler and more strategic science and innovation and technology system. And a large amount of this work has already been delivered. The Prime Minister's Science, Innovation and Technology Advisory Council is in place and is meeting regularly to set long-term direction for the government's investment in science. The 7 Crown Research Institutes have been merged and refocused into 3 new public research organisations. I'd just like to take a moment to welcome James Palmer, who took up the role of Chief Executive of Earth Sciences New Zealand this month, and to acknowledge John Morgan for his leadership as the transition Chief Executive. The New Zealand Institute for Advanced Technology is being established as New Zealand's 4th PRO to ensure that advanced technology delivers meaningful, measurable benefit to New Zealanders. It's already investing in future magnetic and materials technologies and is accelerating AI research. It's also undertaking a discovery phase for potential investment in quantum technologies research. A board is in place for the Institute, and they recently welcomed Andrew Bridgman as their establishment Chief Executive. He'll be in place while they search for a permanent Chief Executive. The disestablishment of Callaghan Innovation is in progress, with the transfer of key functions taking place across the system. A new national intellectual property management policy has also been announced to ensure researchers benefit from the value of their ideas. This will take effect from 1 July this year, and we are working on guidelines to support this. RFNZ has been established as an independent board to consolidate funding decision-making. It's important to note that all existing research contracts continue unchanged, and overall system funding levels are not changing as a result of Research Funding New Zealand being established. An immense amount of work has gone on across the sector into achieving these milestones, and I want to thank all of you for working within the sector and in our PROs, our universities, and our independent research organisations for your dedication and hard work to date. We're now moving to the next phase of the reforms, focused on implementing a strategy-led system for public investment. Under this model, the Prime Minister's Council provides advice to the government. The Minister considers this advice and sets a clear direction for the system through the Science Investment Plan, identifying national priorities and aligning levels of investment with long-term government goals. A core aim is to increase transparency and efficiency so that as much public funding as possible flows directly into high-quality science and innovation that benefits New Zealanders. A key change in this phase is how funding is structured. We're moving from a funds-based system to an outcomes-focused framework built around 4 pillars. The 4 pillars will be based around the economy, advanced technology, environment, and health and society. Together, these pillars organise science investments around outcomes rather than disciplines or institutions. The Minister sets the final shape of the pillars and the level of funding for each through the Science Investment Plan. RFNZ then gives effect to that direction by overseeing the development of pillar investment plans for the Minister to consider. These will set out priorities, desired outcomes, and the balance of investment across funding mechanisms, providing transparency about how priorities are translated into investment. The pillars are broad-based, high-level areas for funding. Each will use a mixture of funding tools, such as contestable grants, mission-led research platforms, strategic capability schemes, and infrastructure support in order to achieve the outcomes sought in those pillars. Funding will be used flexibly across the pillar, with discovery-led research and system enablers, including Mātauranga Māori, sitting across all the pillars to support the wider research ecosystem. Essentially, the Science Investment Plan outlines the what, the system-wide research priorities and allocations, and the pillar investment plans outline the how, outlining how those priorities will be delivered in practice. We're moving to a strategy-led funding system where decisions flow from strategy and government priorities through to funding allocation and individual awards. Our focus is now on embedding this approach across the system, translating the Science Investment Plan into clear investment signals, and aligning pillars, investment plans, and funding instruments to those signals. Previously, funding decisions were driven by the design of individual funds. Going forward, decisions would be guided by system-level priorities, ensuring funding choices are more coherent, consistent, and strategically aligned. The Science Investment Plan is scheduled to be released by June this year and is expected to be a long-term plan, covering possibly a 10-year horizon. The development of pillar investment plans will follow, and RFNZ will provide advice on these plans, while noting that the Minister is the final decision maker, and he'll issue the pillar investment plans, hopefully in September this year. These will represent initial iterations and are expected to be further developed through 2027. These plans are expected to operate on a 5-year cycle with a review at the midpoint. Funding decision-making will transition to RFNZ gradually over the next 4 years, starting with He Ara Whakahihiko Capability Fund and the Marsden Fund in 2026 and the Endeavour Fund in 2027. This slide shows how funding decisions will work in practice in the new system. It starts with the Minister, who sets priorities for the Science Investment Plan and the pillar investment plans. From there, MB supports the design of funding rounds, and RFNZ shapes the funding settings so they align with those priorities. Those settings are then formalised in Gazette notices issued by the Minister. A Gazette notice sets out how the fund will operate, including its purpose, how much funding is available, and the criteria applications will be assessed against. For example, in the Endeavour Fund, the Gazette notice defines the structure of funds like smart ideas or research programs, how funding is allocated, and the assessment criteria. MB will then run a funding round, including guidance for applicants, and run the assessment process. Applications will be assessed by expert panels or assessors against the published criteria, and RFNZ will make the final funding decisions within those settings. MBIE will then contract and monitor funded research, much as we do now, and RFNZ will evaluate the performance of both the funds and the contracts, feeding lessons back into future investment planning. This is a clear end-to-end cycle. Priorities are set up front, rules are published transparently, and funding decisions, importantly, are made independently. It might be helpful to briefly clarify what sits within RFNZ's remit today and what sits outside it. RFNZ is responsible for funding decisions for both mission-led and investigator-led research, including programs funded through the Strategic Science Investment Fund. And when I say that, I mean the thematic programs within that fund. Also funds like Endeavour, Marsden, and the Health Research Fund, and He Ara Whakahihiko Capability Fund. Some investments currently sit outside RFNZ's scope, including institutional funding, international science partnerships, business-facing funds, and funding administered by other agencies. Investment decisions for the New Zealand Institute for Advanced Technology also sit outside Research Funding New Zealand's remit. Being clear about these boundaries helps show where decisions sit and how the system will operate in practice. So this year is a transition funding year for the science system, meaning, and it's really important to us that we maintain stability for the sector. Existing funding mechanisms continue to operate while being progressively aligned to the new strategy-led framework. During this transition, MBIE will continue to run funding rounds and assessments, while RFNZ will make funding decisions within the settings set through Gazette notices and investment plans issued by the Minister. Given the scale of change, the move to the new system will be staged over several years to provide continuity for researchers and organisations. Importantly, I want to confirm that both the Marsden Fund and the Endeavour Fund will proceed this year. In terms of timing for the Endeavour Fund 27 round, a call for proposals is scheduled for July, with applications opening in September, for contracts to begin in October 2027. For the Marsden Fund, RFNZ will receive advice on delivery of the 27 round in late March, with the fund opening later in the year following a similar timetable to previous rounds. RFNZ will also make one of its first sets of decisions as decision maker later this year for the Marsden Fund 26 round, based on recommendations provided by the Marsden Fund Council. And that brings me to Research Funding New Zealand. I'm now going to hand over to Dr Emma Blott, Chair of RFNZ, to introduce the board, explain RFNZ's role and independence, and outline how they will work with the sector. Thanks, Emma.
Thank you, Danette. Kia ora koutou. Thank you for having me today. I'll start by just expanding on my background. Thank you for the kind introduction, Jill. My background is largely in the private sector and primarily in the dairy industry here in New Zealand. And I've worked at both ends of the value chain with 20 years of executive experience across Fonterra and Livestock Improvement Corporation, or LIC. Prior to my roles in the dairy industry, I started my commercial career in investment banking here in New Zealand. And prior to that, in the academic research field of biomedicine in the UK. I'm deeply passionate about science discovery and commercialisation and strongly believe that having the right ecosystem, incentives, including funding, and strategy for science, innovation and technology is critical for us to continue to be a resilient and science-forward country. It is for that reason that I am privileged to take on this role with the RFNZ board. As chair, I'm supported by a board that brings together deep experience across the Marsden Fund, MB Science Board, Health Research Council, and international funding bodies, as well as representatives from universities and public research organisations, PROs, across a wide range of disciplines. Board members were appointed through the same process used for bodies such as the Marsden Fund Council and the Health Research Council. I acknowledge that no board can cover every specialist field, so we will draw on expert assessors and panels in New Zealand and overseas to inform our funding decisions and to provide advice to ministers on science investment and strategy. Together, this ensures funding decisions are well informed, robust, and grounded in the best available expertise. The RFNZ board came together for the first time 2 weeks ago. marking an important milestone in establishing the board. That first meeting focused on developing a shared understanding of our role as an independent funding decision maker, our key responsibilities, and how we will work together. We discussed our initial work programme, how we as a board fits within the wider funding system, and how we will build trust and confidence in funding decisions. We also agreed the culture we want to establish from the outset, which is one grounded in integrity, transparency, and well-informed decision-making. This has set a strong foundation for RFNZ's work in supporting a stable, credible, and trusted funding system for the science sector. As chair, I want to emphasise RFNZ's independence as a funding decision maker. While priorities and settings are set by government, RFNZ makes individual funding decisions independently within those published rules. We do not set policy or run funding rounds. Our role is to apply the criteria consistently and transparently, informed by expert assessment. That separation is deliberate. It is designed to protect the integrity of funding decisions and to give the sector confidence that decisions are evidence-led and fair. This independence is a cornerstone of the new system and central to building long-term trust in how public research funding is allocated. As part of this next phase, RFNZ is leading the development of Pillar Investment Plans, or PIPs, which will set out the mix of funding mechanisms and criteria needed to deliver strategic outcomes. RFNZ is in the process of establishing pillar advisory groups for each pillar. These groups will be chaired by RFNZ board members and will bring together scientific and technical expertise from universities, PROs, and independent research organisations. They will also include industry and end-user perspectives, such as industry bodies, companies, and commercialisation experts and government user agencies, alongside Māori and Pacific expertise focused on economic, health, and environmental outcomes. The role of these groups is advisory, providing insight and real-world context as the plans are developed. This helps ensure the plans are well-informed, balanced, and grounded in how the system operates in practice. So in closing, I'd just like to say that we know that this is a period of significant change and has been for some time in your sectors, but it is also an opportunity to set a strong foundation for the future. Our focus is on providing as much clarity and stability as possible, while building a funding system that supports excellence, enables collaboration, and delivers long-term value for New Zealand. Thank you for your time today. I look forward to the discussion and to working together as this next phase takes shape. Back to you, Jill.
Thank you, Emma, and thank you, Danette, for those two presentations. So we'll move on to the Q&A now. Just a quick reminder that if you want to submit a question, use the Q&A function at the top of your screens. So what I'll do is I'll read out the questions and then direct them to either Danette or Emma to answer. Right, so the first question I think is a Danette question. Given the known detrimental consequences of the New Zealand science funding system's internationally anomalous heavy reliance on indirect cost recovery or overheads to fund core institutional functions, have you considered more fundamental and structural changes that address these problems?
Yeah, kia ora. Thank you for the question, Mark. Yes, we are looking at how we fund research in the system, and particularly how institutions are funded and how overheads operate within the system. So that is part of the work program and something that we'll be looking at over the next few months. So it's definitely on our agenda.
Great. The next one is an easy one. I just need to glance at my colleagues. Will the slides be available after the webinar? I think that's a yes. Yes, I'm getting nods, so they will be together with the recording of the webinar, so you can go back and listen as well. Next one. Given that the decision-making starts with the Minister, as noted on your slide, and that there is a 10-year plan, what input across the political party spectrum has been undertaken to ensure that changing governments don't cause upheaval and roller coaster activity is what generally happens in any changing of the guard? I think that's definitely a Danette one.
It's a challenging question. I think what I would say to that is that we're setting up a system for the next 30 years that creates a strategy-led system that enables governments to articulate their priorities through the science system. And I think any government of any day will always want to be able to ensure that government investment in RSNI is occurring aligned to government priorities, and they're going to want to have the ability to articulate that. So I think that's a consistent something that's consistent into the future. What may change, of course, in any government, and has done so over the last 30 years, is there may be aspects any new government might want to change within the system in terms of what the priorities might be. But it does tend to be more of an emphasis rather than wide-sweeping change. To put it into context, this change is the biggest change we've had for 30 years, and what we're trying to put into place is a system that'll last another 30 years.
I think the next one is also a Danette question. So how will the sector be supported between now and when these new rounds of funding are awarded? So I think a question effectively about continuity of the funding. Yeah, so we, as I mentioned when I was speaking, we're not going to break any contracts. If you've got a research contract, that continues. And we are running a transition process around Marsden, Endeavour, and here Ara Whakahiko. So those large funds will operate this year. And additionally, we fund institutional funding through the Science Investment Fund, through to the PROs and IROs. Those contracts are being extended for a couple of years as we work through some of the changes. And finally, we've got these longer-term strategic science investment missions, things like the Antarctic platform, the Natural Hazards platform, and so on, and they will also continue. So there's actually quite a lot of stability built into the system through existing contracts and through continuing to run some of these processes that the sector have traditionally engaged in. Right. Next question, I think I'll throw to Emma, and one about balance between blue sky research and commercialisation. So is there still space in the new system for blue sky and discovery research?
Yes, absolutely. I think it's been clear through all of the documentation, through the reforms and the communication, that the government still believes and should believe that discovery-led research remains essential. From an RFNZ perspective, we will support a balanced portfolio. So it will continue to have investigator-led, mission-led, and capability investments, ensuring excellence and impact. As both Danette and I said in our introductions, we will be developing those pillar investment plans, which will detail the mix of funds and their criteria required to achieve strategic objectives. What that balance will look like with respect to mission-led versus investigator-led funding is to be determined, but we are consulting through the development of those pillar investment plans. As Danette said also, it's very important to say that the science investment plan does direct the high-level detail of those pillar investment plans, but that extra level of detail that we go to around the funding mix will be informed largely by those pillar investment plans.
Thank you. One, I think I'll throw to Danette first, but maybe Emma can throw some light on it as well. So how will the pillar advisory groups be appointed, and is there an opportunity for nominations to be contributed?
Sure. So the pillar advisory group is going to be appointed by Research Funding New Zealand. Each pillar will be a pillar advisory group will be chaired by a Research Funding New Zealand board member, and MB has been working with those individuals and the full RFNZ board to come up with a list of names that could participate on those pillar advisory groups. We're looking, each pillar will be slightly different, but we're looking for a mix of people that can represent broad science strategy, industry, end user representation, government, and iwi, Māori and Pacifica. So the decision to appoint those is made by Research Funding New Zealand. I don't know if you want to add anything to that at all, Emma?
No, I think you covered it off perfectly. Thank you, Danette.
Great. Next one is a timing question, and I think probably a Danette one as well. When can we expect the pillar investment plans to be announced?
The Minister's intending to announce those at the end of September. That's the current timetable we're working to, and they will be interim pillar investment plans. They will be reiterated with a final set being developed in 27.
Great. The next one, again, I'll throw it to Danette in the first instance and whether Emma has any comments afterwards. So, is it a priority for RFNZ that scientists have a base salary like all those who are engaged in developing the science reforms? Currently, it is hard to recommend science students to embark on an uncertain career in science, where their employment fundamentally depends on the vagaries of success in contestable funding.
It's a very complex question. So as I mentioned before, we are having a look at institutional funding mechanisms and how overheads work in the system. At the moment, New Zealand works under a full cost funding model where your research projects include staff time and overheads. And then it is I guess it's a responsibility of the employing institutions to ensure that they can use that full cost funding model and other sources of revenue that they have in order to support their workforce. So it is important, I think, probably really to focus on that. One of the remits for Research Funding New Zealand is to think about workforce and how we might have mechanisms to support a thriving, talented workforce in New Zealand. And that will be part of the pillar investment plan process.
Any further comments there, Emma, or is that's sufficiently well covered?
Once again, I think Danette's done an excellent job at answering it. The only point I would add is it's important to acknowledge that the remit of what RFNZ can make funding decisions on is limited to the current fund structures that are in our purview, as Danette covered off. What we will require is good visibility of other science and innovation and technology decisions that are being made in other agencies or in other mechanisms across MBIE, so that we're making a coordinated decision across all aspects of workforce, infrastructure and research programs aligned to the pillar investment plans.
Right, thank you. Question about Vision Mātauranga, so one for Danette, I think in the first instance. So what role will Vision Mātauranga or treaty considerations inform and be part of RFNZ's responsibilities, including how research should seek to create impact where the need is in the country, whether it's health, environmental, or educational?
Yeah, it's a great question. So Vision Mātauranga is the policy that we continue to operate under and will impact on the funds administered by us and decisions made by Research Funding New Zealand. So as I mentioned, the Marsden and Endeavour will run very similar to they have in the past. So the Vision Mātauranga will be an important component of those. We have the He Ara Whakahihiko Capability Fund. And then Research Funding New Zealand will give consideration to whether there are other ways that we can deliver on the Vision Mātauranga policy through the funds that we operate and the decisions that they make. So that's something that they can give consideration to going forward. Emma, would you like to expand on that at all?
Just to say that it continues to be an absolute priority, and we do want to ensure that we continue to have good representation in our funding decisions and also in our fund design to ensure that we uphold our obligations and important commitments in that space.
Thank you. Next one, I'll ask Emma to have a first crack at this one. So how will RFNZ ensure its independence, considering the strong structural connections with the Council, Prime Minister's Council, the Minister and MBIE?
Very important question, and one that we are acutely conscious of, and it's an important design principle. So just to reiterate, the true independence for us as a funding board comes in when we are making funding decisions. The design of that new funding regime that will be developed over our work program will be advice that we provide to the Minister on what that fund mechanism and settings could be. It is ultimately the Minister's decision to take our advice or not, or aspects of that. To ensure that we are getting a wide-rounded view to inform that advice. As we said, we've got these pillar investment plan groups being set up, which have good cross-sector representation. We are receiving and will be receiving good informed advice from MBIE as our secretariat for the board, but we also have the ability to seek and commission, where required, independent research to inform our advice ultimately to the Minister. So we're not truly independent in the sense of the advice that we provide to the Minister. However, once we're in funding mode, we are. Hopefully that answers the question.
Yeah, thank you. Next one, I think again for Emma. So will different pillars potentially have different mixes of blue sky versus mission-led science? And will the same funding instruments be used for each pillar?
So to answer the first question, we don't know yet, but absolutely, I think the shape of each pillar and the balance of the type of funding and the type of research that goes into each pillar will be different, just by the nature of the research that's required to provide a resilient ecosystem for New Zealand versus a pillar that's more geared towards the economy. So that makes absolute sense that you'd use different balances of funding and different mechanisms for that. To answer the second part of the question, we have to go through that process. Once we know what the outcomes are that we're trying to achieve and the types of funding that is best suited to do that, we will design and advise the Minister on what we think the best fund design is. It could be something similar to what we have now. It could be something completely different or somewhere in between. We will be exploring all those options and looking at learnings from our current system and also best practice from overseas as well. So yet to be seen, but yes, there will be a difference, I imagine, across the pillars.
Right, so early days, a lot of work to be done there. One back to Danette. Are there intentions to extend the role of RFNZ to include funders like MBIE and others?
Not at this particular point in time. It's possible that that could happen in the future if that was a decision ministers wanted to make, but that's not what we're currently operating towards.
Right. Next one. In terms of being strategy-led, are you able to talk more specifically about who has provided input into the chosen strategy?
Sure. So the strategy's been developed by the Prime Minister's Council, and it's drawn heavily on sector input through the SAG process that was run by Sir Peter Blackman. And it's also drawn heavily on a lot of data that looks at internationally at other funders, other government funders, how they set priorities, what the opportunities are, how we compare in terms of how we invest in, in those pillar areas. So what is the rate of investment we have in environment, health and society, advanced technology, bioeconomy, and so on. And all of that is fed into their advice through to government about what the priorities should be. That sets those priorities at a high level, and then the pillar investment plan development process will take those high level priorities and develop the next level of prioritisation around the outcomes that we're seeking. And the pillar advisory groups that we mentioned before will be an important contributor to that development. So it's sort of happening at multiple levels in the system.
Right. Now, this is a next question, one that I'm sure everybody will have top of mind. And I think I'll pass it to Danette. So a key area that has not changed in a number of years is the amount of actual funds put into research. Have RFNZ been looking at securing larger funding pools? Currently, all researchers are being asked to do more with less. For us to keep up with international research, we need to properly invest.
Yeah. I think we'd all agree that investing in research is important. Government sees investing in research as important for New Zealand's future. I think you'd be all aware that we're working in a fiscally constrained environment within the government at the moment, but decisions about where money is allocated across, whether it's science or whether it goes into health or it goes into justice or what other portfolio is the decision for Cabinet. So they're the decision maker around the level of investment across the system.
Okay. More of a mechanics question. So when can we expect to hear more information about upcoming funds? So He Ara Whakahihiko, Endeavour, Marsden, particularly if there are any changes that research officers should prepare for.
Yes. So we're currently providing some advice up to Research Funding New Zealand about how those funds might operate this year. That's to help them formulate their advice to the Minister on those fund settings. What we are hoping to do is have advice from Research Funding New Zealand going up in a timely way so that the Minister can issue Gazette notices around the middle of the year for Endeavour and Marsden, with a view of kicking off later in the year. The timelines I said before, which I've forgotten off the top of my head, I think we're looking at information coming out around June, July for Endeavour, with the round opening around October, and Marsden would be on a similar time frame that Marsden's typically run on. And He Ara Whakahihiko, we would also look at coming out around the middle of the year as well in terms of the fund settings. So if there are, we will engage with research officers through Strive, which is a group where we bring the research officers together and talk through some of those changes if there are any changes, when the time is right.
Thanks, Danette. And I guess for the researchers out there, there will be opportunities for you to bid into. So yeah, I'm sure everybody's got lots of ideas that are just waiting to get put in. Next one's an industry-related one, so I think we'll pass this to Emma. So from an industry perspective, this looks like same behaviour, different organisational structures. New Zealand firms don't see predictable multi-year collaborative platforms where they can justify long-term co-investment in capability and infrastructure. Is the intent that one of the pillar board outcomes will look to mechanisms that treat New Zealand businesses as co-producers of knowledge, not just end users? Good question.
That's a great question, and one that I fully support coming from the private industry. Obviously, commercialisation is a clear priority for the government, and that has been very clear in some of the changes that have been mooted through the reforms. And so it's very important for us in terms of our funding mechanism advice that we ensure that there is an opportunity for more co-investment from businesses. I mean, having a shared buy-in and an obvious route to market is the perfect idea for anything from discovery through to commissioned research. So absolutely. How we do that, again, is all down to how we think through the new fund design for the future. We are deliberately, as we said before, having industry engagement and having private sector representation in these advisory groups that we've mentioned before, and we'll likely do that as well for when we think about the future fund mechanisms as well. You'll also see that there is private sector representation on the Prime Minister's Science, Innovation and Technology Advisory Council, the PIMSATAC, and that is so that we get a clear voice coming through on how we create and support new businesses through fundamental research and applied research. At the same time, we recognise that not all valuable research is immediately commercial, so we still need to continue to invest in public good, policy, environmental and social impact research. And also we need to, as I said before, continue to encourage the investment in discovery or blue sky research. And out of that sort of risky investment from a fund manager perspective could also create incredible new industries that we don't really have currently in the country. So in summary, yes, we want to ensure that we've got mechanisms that encourage co-investment. We want to encourage research that has a commercial outcome, but not to the exception of all other forms of research, which I've just mentioned. But it is definitely I'd say a change that's required from the government around that commercialisation capability of the science that the government invests in.
Thank you, Emma. Next one, I think, could be both of you. So I'll ask Danette first, and then Emma, if you've got anything to add. So how will the advanced tech pillar be distinguished from the other pillars, given advanced tech is likely to have relevance and impact towards health, society, environment, and the economy?
Yeah, that's a really great question. So these pillars are outcome focused. So if you think of it like that. You've got an environment pillar that's about improving environmental outcomes for New Zealand. You've got an economic pillar that's about improving economic outcomes for New Zealand. The advanced tech pillar is about creating new advanced technology sectors that deliver economic value. So that would be about technologies that are going to grow technology businesses and sectors. However, advanced tech is also a tool that can support the growth of the primary sector through agri-tech, or improve environmental outcomes for envirotech, or lead to better health outcomes through medtech. And so it's really about the focus of the research and the outcomes it's trying to achieve as to which pillar it aligns to. So essentially, it's both a horizontal and a vertical within the system.
Thanks, Danette. Anything to add on that, Emma?
No, I'm good. Thank you.
So I think we're coming to the end of our time. I don't see any other questions that have popped up, unless I'm getting a yeah, maybe, no, yes, all good, all good, all good. I'm getting a thumbs up. I think that's it for questions. So, oh no, I see one. A last minute one. Just when we thought we'd finish, one pops in. So I think this is a Danette one. How will these reforms affect future directions for the Health Research Council?
Yeah, thank you, Peter. So government has decided that the Health Research Fund will come to Research Funding New Zealand as well, as they'll be the decision maker for that fund. Of course, that fund currently sits with the Health Research Council, and so the plan is longer term is for the disestablishment of the Health Research Council, Health Research Funding to come to Research Funding New Zealand, decisions guided by the Health and Society pillar. But those changes are in a few years away yet. So at the moment, we'll develop the Health and Society pillar, and that will guide decisions that are made by the Health Research Council longer term.
Great. Thanks. Now I'm told, now I've been handed notes. There are lots of more questions, but we're just about running out of time. So we'll call it good there. But as I mentioned at the start, any questions that we haven't answered, we'll try and answer through newsletters and through FAQs on the website. So rest assured that we'll get to them, or they'll be included in future newsletters or seminars. And in terms of the newsletters, I'd encourage you to sign up for the newsletters. That's where you get regular updates on the reforms, and also where notification for webinars like this one will come up in future. We're hoping to do another one later in the year, so look out for that in due course. So it just remains for me to thank both speakers, both Emma and Danette, for some excellent presentations and for the answers through the Q&A, but also to everybody who's listening in for all your really interesting and useful questions. And a final thank you to the tech and comms people who've been supporting here in the background and making sure things run smoothly and give me lots of notices and kicks under the table. So thank you to everybody who's been involved in this. We'll look forward to our next one, and I'll just close up with a closing karakia. Ka hiki te tapu, kia waitia aitiara, kia turuki aita au marama, huye tai kie.